wrestling names.
And what would your wrestling name be?
El Guapo.
There's no arguing that.
Corey Harrison's story is one of transformation, starting from a place of struggle and uncertainty to becoming one of the wealthiest reality stars alive. Just a few years ago, Corey seemed like a man on the edge. He was borrowing money, grinding away with 60-hour work weeks, and barely keeping his head above water. Yet all of that changed dramatically when his grandfather, known as the Old Man, passed away. In the wake of his death, the Harrison family was thrust into a legal battle over the inheritance. What was found in the will shocked everyone. Sons were cut out, while grandchildren, including Corey, received millions. But the real story of how Corey Harrison came into his wealth wasn't as straightforward as it seemed. Corey's roots trace back to Las Vegas, where his father, Rick, was just a teenager when he became a father himself. At 17, Rick's life was anything but stable. He had already lost one child before Corey was born on April 27, 1983. The family's dreams seemed shattered, and when Corey came into the world, it felt like a second chance, a new beginning. Rick and his wife Kim tried to make it work, but the strain proved too much. By 1984, Corey's parents divorced, and the young boy would mostly grow up with his father, who was barely more than a kid himself. Rick, at just 18, found himself balancing multiple jobs in the chaos of Las Vegas, doing whatever it took to survive and care for Corey. Meanwhile, his own parents had just been hit hard by the housing crash of 1981, losing everything they had in San Diego. They packed up what little remained and drove to Vegas with hopes of a fresh start. At just 18 years old, Rick was jobless, a new father, and living in a city built on chance and risk. It was then that Rick's father, Richard, known as the Old Man, saw an opportunity in gold and silver coins. Opening a modest 300-square-foot pawn shop on Las Vegas Boulevard, with little more than grit, hope, and a dream, the Old Man's venture slowly started to pay off. Corey's childhood was far from typical. He grew up surrounded by the buzz of the pawn shop, where piles of coins and pawn tickets littered the back rooms. The business was rough, filled with the stories of gamblers and people who had lost everything. And the shop became Corey's unconventional playground. From a young age, Corey was learning more than most kids ever would. His dad, Rick, had dropped out of high school in 10th grade and was no stranger to the world of knockoff goods, street deals, and hustles. He also had a long history with drugs, which only added to the challenges of raising his son. Corey's mom, Kim, was in and out of his life, leaving the pawn shop as his constant. It wasn't just his father who taught him the ways of the world. The pawn shop itself became his school. By 1989, the Harrisons had secured their pawn license after years of waiting. Rick had kept a close eye on the city's population, knowing that only one pawn license was allowed for every 50,000 people. Once Vegas hit 250,000 people, the license came through, and the gold and silver pawn shop was born. The shop was just a short distance from the Las Vegas Strip, but for Corey, it might as well have been a lifetime away from the bright lights of the city. Even as a kid, he was steeped in the world of pawn, learning the art of distinguishing real from fake, the value of a piece, and how to restore what had been lost. By 1992, at just 9 years old, Corey's education was already unconventional. He wasn't just playing with toys, he was learning how to evaluate antiques and precious metals. One day, his grandfather handed him a gold chain brought in by a customer. Corey's instincts told him something wasn't right. The gold seemed too light, the shine off, and something about it just didn't sit well. After a closer inspection, Corey and his grandfather determined it was fake, a piece of gold-plated junk. For Corey, this wasn't just about the chain. It was the first time he realized the power of his instincts. That lesson, worth just $5, would be one of the most valuable lessons he'd ever learned. By the time Corey was 12, in 1995, his knowledge of collectibles had grown exponentially. While his peers were focused on school and sports, Corey was sorting through dusty boxes of old comics in the back of the pawn shop. It was there that he found a 1960s Marvel comic, Werewolf by Night. a treasure he quickly realized could be worth a lot. When he showed it to Rick, his father's smile told him all he needed to know. It was worth about $200. To a 12-year-old, that amount was a small fortune. Corey realized then that collectibles weren't just cool. They were investments, and he began searching for rare items with the same zeal a gold miner might have. But life wasn't all about treasure hunts. In 1996, after his parents' divorce, Corey's life became even more complicated. His mother, Kim, would often show up at the shop, leading to arguments over child support. Corey became a silent observer, learning how to navigate conflict, to read people's moods, and to keep peace where there was none. These personal struggles were hard, but they toughened him. The pawn shop wasn't just a place to make money. It became his training ground for surviving the turmoil of family life. In 1997, Corey took on a challenge that would cement his place in the Harrison family business. He was asked to pick up a vintage watch parked 5 miles away from the shop. With no car and the temperature reaching over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, Corey rode his bike to get it, drenched in sweat and exhaustion. When he finally returned, his father and grandfather didn't hand him a medal, but the look they gave him said it all. He had earned his place. That ride in the scorching heat taught him more than just perseverance. It taught him grit, and that grit became his trademark. The pawn shop, however, wasn't just a place for lessons. In 1997, Corey witnessed the darker side of the business. One day, an angry man came in, upset about a loan, and things quickly escalated. The man pulled out a knife and lunged toward Rick. Corey, though just 14, had to stand there and watch the violence unfold. Rick remained calm, but Corey would never forget that moment. It was the first time he truly understood that danger wasn't just something you read about in books. It was part of the job. The pawn shop wasn't just about antiques. It was also a magnet for people who had nothing left to lose. By 1998, Corey had dropped out of high school. At just 15, he was working full-time at the pawn shop, logging inventory, and ensuring every item was properly recorded. He worked tirelessly to keep the shop running, learning the fine details of the business that others might have overlooked. But at 16, he briefly ventured into something else, working as an electrician's apprentice. It didn't last long. One day, while working on a live wire, Corey got shocked so badly it left him seeing stars. That was the end of that career. He realized that the pawn shop was where he truly belonged. The risks there were high, but at least he knew the rules. At 17, Corey was finally given the opportunity to manage the jewelry counter at the pawn shop. That's where he truly began to shine. It was here that he found a 1920s diamond brooch worth $15,000. Corey didn't just sell it, he negotiated the price down to $10,000, proving to his father and grandfather that he was more than just a kid, he was a businessman. Rick, impressed with his son's abilities, started calling him Big Hoss, a nickname that would stick. From that moment on, Corey Harrison was no longer just the son of the pawn shop owner. He was a key player in the family business. The next year, Corey decided to try his hand at construction, helping expand the pawn shop. However, things took a quick turn when a beam slipped and crushed his thumb. The pain was intense and immediate, sending him straight back to the place he knew best, the pawn shop. It was a clear message. He could try other paths, but the pawn world always seemed to pull him back in. That shop wasn't just a place of business. It was his home, the heart of everything he knew. It was where he grew up, learned, and began to carve out his future. The pawn world had a hold on him, and no matter how hard he tried, it was always calling him back. In 2002, Corey found himself falling in love with Charlene, his high school sweetheart. While juggling long hours at the pawn shop, Corey also worked hard to make their relationship thrive. One night, just before midnight, he closed a $5,000 coin deal, all to fund a special date with her. That was Corey in a nutshell, mixing hustle with heart, blending his business with his personal life. Every deal, every coin, and every moment mattered. And in his eyes, nothing was ever too late if it meant he could do something special for someone he cared about. But in 2003, things took a darker turn. Corey's trust was shattered when a cousin stole $2,000 worth of merchandise from the shop. Corey tried to cover it up, thinking he was protecting his family, but the truth came out, and the consequences were severe. Family dinners turned cold, and the betrayal ran deep. Corey learned one of the hardest lessons of all, that sometimes blood isn't enough. In business, loyalty must be earned, and even family could hurt you. From that point on, Corey made it a rule. Loyalty was something you had to prove, not just something you were given. By the time he was 20, Corey had become the assistant manager at Gold and Silver Pawn Shop, overseeing a team of 10. He didn't just do his job, he redefined it. Corey started making changes to improve the way the shop ran, particularly focusing on the loan process for rare and high-value items, like Civil War relics. He implemented stricter ID checks and demanded more detailed records. Within a year, the default rate on loans dropped dramatically, from 25% to just 10%. This wasn't just a small win, it was a transformation. The shop was safer, more organized, and more trustworthy, and Corey's fingerprints were all over it. But that was just the beginning of his journey. By 2005, Corey had started to think differently about the business. He looked around at the crowded aisles full of collectibles, and an idea began to form. Why not take the shop digital? Corey took on the monumental task of uploading photos of over 1,000 items to an online catalog, a decision that seemed ahead of its time, especially in an industry where most pawn shops barely had a computer. The results spoke for themselves. In just 6 months, eBay sales jumped by 30%, pulling in an extra $150,000 a year. Corey wasn't chasing fame or recognition. He was solving problems with a forward-thinking approach that most in the business hadn't yet considered. His gamble on the digital world didn't just boost sales, it brought the shop national attention, setting the stage for something much bigger, the birth of Pawn Stars. Then in 2006, Corey took another big risk. A customer came in with a 1948 Harley-Davidson knucklehead worth $50,000. Corey believed in the bike, but his dad, Rick, wasn't convinced. Despite Rick's hesitation, Corey pushed for the loan. When the customer defaulted, the bike went to auction and sold for $75,000. That $25,000 profit didn't just prove Corey's gut instinct was sharp, it changed everything. That deal earned him a co-ownership stake in the shop at just 23 years old. From that moment forward, Corey wasn't just managing the shop, he was helping shape its future. But the road wasn't always smooth. In 2007, a Nevada gaming audit revealed some sloppy paperwork, costing the shop a $20,000 fine. Corey took the hit, but instead of wallowing in the mistake, he overhauled the entire system. He created a new digital tracking system that meticulously documented every loan. A year later, the shop received praise from state regulators for its clean books. What started as a painful mistake became a model for the industry. Corey's ability to learn from failures and turn them into successes was a hallmark of his leadership. Then came the 2008 recession, a challenge that could have broken the shop. Revenue plunged by 40%, and luxury items stopped moving. But Corey didn't panic. He slashed hours, rehired staff selectively, and took on the job of appraising foreclosure jewelry. In one brutal month, he handled 500 pieces on his own. By 2009, the shop had clawed back 70% of its revenue, thanks to Corey's ability to adapt quickly and calmly. It was a defining moment, showing that in times of crisis, Corey had the vision and the work ethic to keep the shop afloat. As the years went on, Corey's skills in authentication became sharper. He spent countless hours learning about rare coins, antiques, and Civil War relics from his grandfather, the Old Man. In 2009, Corey's expertise was put to the test when a man brought in a sketch he claimed was worth $100,000. Corey spotted the signs that it was fake and called it out. His quick thinking saved the shop from a 6-figure loss, proving that he could see through hype and forgery with the calm precision that came from years of experience. Then, on July 19, 2009, everything changed. Pawn Stars aired its first episode. Corey's moment came when he negotiated a vintage guitar from $1,500 down to $800. The scene was a hit, and fans quickly warmed to Corey's sharp instincts and likable personality. By the end of that first year, Pawn Stars was pulling in 1.5 million viewers every week. Foot traffic at the shop skyrocketed, going from a few hundred visitors a day to more than 500. The crowds became so overwhelming that staff had to be hired just to manage the chaos. Corey wasn't just a businessman anymore, he was now a TV star. In 2010, during Season 2, Corey found himself making deals for rare 1940s baseball card sets worth $25,000. Viewership crossed the 2 million mark, and the shop's tourism saw a 300% increase. Lines wrapped around the building daily, and Corey's salary hit $300,000 by 2011. Shop revenue soared past $10 million by 2012. Corey had transformed the shop from a family-run business into a global phenomenon. He was no longer just part of the business, he was its face. But with fame came pressure. In 2011, tensions with Chumlee spilled over onto the screen. The two clashed over a $10,000 sword, and the drama boosted ratings to 4 million viewers. The producers leaned into the friction, knowing it would draw in more viewers, and Corey was thrust even further into the spotlight. The show grew, and his pay jumped another $300,000. Behind the scenes, producers sometimes asked him to script his reactions, but when it came to real deals, Corey's instincts never failed him. His sharp eye and authenticity kept fans coming back. Fame wasn't all glamour. In 2010, paparazzi followed him after a club appearance, and a small car accident ensued. Corey tried to keep it quiet, but privacy was a thing of the past. Even simple nights out became public drama. Yet through it all, Corey remained grounded. He showed up for work every day, handled the pressure, and kept his focus on the business. He was no longer just Big Hoss. He had become a symbol of the shop's success. In 2012, Corey and Chumlee invested $500,000 in a Quiznos franchise. Corey used his pawn shop negotiation skills to cut costs and turn a profit in less than a year. They eventually sold the franchise, and the deal showed that Corey could win in any business, not just the pawn world. But Corey's success wasn't limited to the pawn shop. In 2013, he expanded the shop to 15,000 square feet, adding a memorabilia wing filled with Elvis guitars, vintage movie props, and jerseys. Revenue jumped from $7 million to $10 million annually, and the shop became part museum, part retail, part Hollywood attraction. Corey's vision had transformed the gold and silver pawn shop into a Las Vegas landmark. By 2014, Corey's fame had reached new heights. He appeared on an iCarly crossover, appraising a $5,000 prop violin. The episode, which aired in 2012, had gained significant buzz by 2014 and introduced Pawn Stars to a younger audience. Merchandising deals followed, and Corey became an integral part of pop culture. But even with all his success, Corey didn't forget where he came from. He co-hosted Pawnography, a spin-off trivia show, and donated all $100,000 in prize winnings to charity. Fans saw more than just a savvy businessman. They saw someone who used his platform to give back to his community. At just 21, Corey Harrison found himself married to his high school sweetheart, Charlene Betancourt. It was 2004, and the young couple was ready to take on the world together. For a while, it seemed to work. But as the years passed, the weight of the pawn shop's operations, the relentless filming schedule, and the constant travel began to take its toll. Rumors started swirling as the couple moved from city to city, whispers of infidelity during the filming tours. After 11 years together, they quietly called it quits. In 2015, there were no public battles or bitter statements, just an understated split and two people walking different paths. Corey didn't stay single for long. In May 2017, he married Karina Ely, a woman known as Kiki in the Vegas social circles. However, their marriage barely lasted a year. By September 2018, they were divorced. They cited irreconcilable differences, with most of the blame falling on their conflicting work schedules. Despite their breakup, the two kept things civil, co-parenting their son Joshua, born in October 2018. It was a complicated time, but Corey and Kiki made sure to keep their relationship grounded for their son. That same year, Corey's life began to shift in a way that would change everything. Having already undergone lap band surgery in 2013, he had gone from 402 pounds to a much healthier 210. But it wasn't just about losing weight. It was a complete reset for Corey. The surgery gave him the chance to rebuild himself physically and mentally. He started boxing, snowboarding, and doing things he hadn't been able to do in years. When Joshua was born, Corey quit drinking altogether. The pawn shop still demanded long, grueling hours, 60 hours a week at times. But Corey began carving out space for balance. He even found himself appraising baby items like a vintage stroller worth $500, half as a joke, half as practice. Fatherhood grounded him. It gave him direction. But life wasn't done with him yet. In January 2024, Corey's younger brother, Adam, was found dead in a Las Vegas guest house at just 39. The coroner confirmed it. Fentanyl and methamphetamine overdose. Accidental but fatal. Rick Harrison, their father, made a public statement, calling it a wake-up call for the family. Corey, however, said little. He was filming when the news broke, but behind the cameras, the grief was consuming him. The family kept their pain private, but those close to Corey could see the toll it took on him. By 2025, fans started noticing something was different. Corey's posture seemed slouched, his face tired online. People speculated about deeper health issue, possibly even scoliosis. But Corey's family stayed silent, and the absence of answers only deepened the mystery. The silence, it seemed, spoke volumes. Corey's past wasn't without its own blemishes. In August 2014, while on a motorcycle tour in Jefferson City, Missouri, he hit rock bottom in the public eye. After 7 nights of heavy partying, Corey found himself so drunk that he dropped his pants and urinated on a bar stool. Patrons captured the incident on video, and it quickly went viral. Corey later described it as, "Not my finest moment." But by then, his off-screen life had already started unraveling. Things only worsened from there. In 2015, Corey found himself involved in Chumley's legal scandal. Police raided Chumley's house, uncovering marijuana, meth, and guns. Corey helped bail him out, parting with a portion of the $62,000 bond. He even testified in court. The whole ordeal didn't just bring scrutiny to the pawn shop, it dragged Corey's name through the mud as well. The fallout was significant, but for Corey, it was just another chapter in a life that had been anything but smooth. In September 2023, Corey found himself arrested for DUI in Las Vegas. Police pulled over his Ford F-250 around 2 a.m., finding him slow to respond, his eyes bloodshot, reeking of alcohol. He initially refused a breathalyzer, but when one didn't work, they drew blood. Corey was jailed for 8 hours, but later claimed medical distractions and vowed to fight the charge. It was yet another setback in a series of struggles that seemed to follow him. But behind the chaos, there were deeper tensions within the family that nobody saw coming. When Richard, the old man Harrison, passed away in 2018, the will dropped a bombshell. He had updated it in 2017, cutting out his youngest son, Christopher, entirely. Corey was the one who inherited the shop stakes and cars. The will was a blow to the family, and Corey found himself caught in the middle of a battle he never saw coming. Court documents confirmed it. The family rifts grew wider, and as the drama unfolded, Corey's net worth quietly climbed past $5 million. But the millions didn't come without a price. As if the family drama wasn't enough, 2023 brought more tension. This time from the show itself. Corey clashed with producers who were trying to force him into a scripted role off camera. He was frustrated with the pressure of being made to appear 23 when he was, in fact, turning 41. His arguments with the producers were so heated that some of them never made it to air. Corey was done pretending. He wanted more control over the business side of things, or he was ready to walk. After tense negotiations, he walked away with 5% ownership of the shop and a raise. But it didn't fix the underlying burnout. By September 2024, 3 months after wrapping season 23, Corey made a drastic decision. He left Las Vegas behind without a farewell episode or a big send-off. He packed up and moved to Tulum, Mexico. It was a clean break, with no drama or fanfare. Corey began forging new relationships with the locals, even connecting with the mayor. He gave a shout-out to his 500,000 Instagram followers, explaining his fresh start. In Mexico, he focused on a new venture, a barbecue restaurant called Big Hoss's Smokin' Joint, and began flipping real estate. He was done with the pawn shop, done with the cameras. Corey Harrison had found his new pace, and it was on his terms. He sold his Las Vegas home for $2 million, having purchased it for $1 million in 2013. He kept his stake in the gold and silver pawn shop, and of course, the 1957 Chevy that his grandfather had left him. But the pressure was behind him now. Rick was still at the shop, but Corey had moved on. He said he was well off enough not to return. He was mentoring his son Joshua remotely, teaching him the trade without dragging him into the pawn business. And though he was toying with the idea of a spin-off show in Mexico, focusing on artifacts or pawn tips, he wasn't in a rush. Life now ran on Corey's terms.